Hi everyone, Trader685 here, just going through this week's or this latest edition of the Chart Garden. Issued the PDF out yesterday. The Substack is also out, trader685.substack.com. So just taking a look through some of these charts. As always, this document is part of my process. Nothing is financial advice, entertainment purposes only. Do your own due diligence on everything. This document is part of my process to try and find the next hood and Palantir early. And the base breakout is the main sort of structure that I use. So some high potential charts, these are low down in their bases, some of these, but just let's go through them. So the prime chart of this week was Fastly. It's an edge speed cloud computing. It had a big move after its earnings. Market is obviously not positioned here, has not been looking at the story. And hence why you get such large moves. So let's just take a quick look at this chart. I'll just get this up here. Okay, so you've got the FSLY. Okay, so on top you've got the 3-day. Underneath you've got, let's just put the 1-day for now, so you can just see a bit of contrast. Let's just take the interval off. So we set this up here. Okay, so you can see this gap that formed, came up, came above this resistance level into it, and now is consolidating. Even when the market was quite weak last week, you'd expect a high beta, only a $1.68 billion market cap stock like this, to really correct, but it's holding in there. Does this form a sideways and then go? Up here is its IPO level, right? It seems like a natural target they could potentially reach. Let's just see if this story can get going. Usually after an earnings beats, stocks can have like, 6 to 8 quarters of moves, significant moves as they get traction, new business model sort of, kicks in, etc. So this is one to keep on the watch. This is a little bit early. Ideally want to hold above this level here and then build a base and then move up. But let's see how this reacts. Now, again, just at the side here, Robinhood, look at this big base. Sorry, Palantir, look at this big base here, then the breakout, then the move. Look at Robinhood, this big base. This is what we're looking for, just as a reminder. Okay, so going to the next stock, this is my current chart garden. A few things have been taken out that failed, but Lemonade at the moment is one of my favorite plays. This has kind of moved, this has moved a fair amount. The ideal entry probably would have been around here somewhere. But, it's had a big breakout now, potential structural breakout, held this here as well. So if you think about it, everybody who's in this stock has played this move, moved up to here. If they wanted to sell it, this would have been at, a 3-year high. They had all the time to sell it, but they didn't sell it. It's now moved up, as this AI insurance theme starts to get traction. If we look at the intraday last week into the weakness of last week, yes, it did have a fall. This is possibly a pod getting taken out. This is just a drastic fall. But then, on Friday, it recovered quite aggressively, came back, touched this 21 EMA, as classic sort of traders area, undercut this open level, and it's holding up today as well. So let's see if this can build, sideways and then build for another move up. Again, it's a kind of narrative that can really catch on, big TAM to go after, native AI company potential, if it gets a potential alliances with Tesla or something, something like this can really go. Next one, DigitalOcean. I talked about this last week. This is a favorite of mine. Again, I wish trading would speed up a little bit. So you've got this big base that's formed here. Capital light cloud business for SMEs, usage-based revenue, room to upsell, higher value managed services as customers grow, new CEOs, a decent track record. And again, is this the start of AI for SME traction? Breaking out of a base, held up well last week. Again, on a move like this, it's a relatively smaller stock. You'd expect it to get crushed, but buyers came in, not heavy volume, but stepped in. Possibly a seller getting taken out here, but let's see how it reacts over the next few days. right? DigitalOcean, right? It's the new addition, Datadog. Again, been doing quite a lot of work on this name. This is the mission critical observability platform powering cloud and AI infrastructure, accelerating growth amid AI adoption. Basically, you want to watch your internal network, you want to watch your data logs, all this kind of stuff. Datadog provides this all on one platform. It's breaking out of a 4-year range, right? This is, 2021. So it's come back down, attempt here, and now consolidating, getting traction. Again, this is something, that can really get traction and start to move. It's a category leader. It's 64 billion market cap, still decent size. But again, do we see institutional buying? And there was a bit of a recovery play, but larger stocks like this could easily dip down here into this gap. Let's see if it starts to get bought up. That would be a pretty strong endorsement if it does. Okay, so one of my favorite plays at the moment, I think I did talk about this last week, RIVN, right? So a lot of people have been waiting for this stock for a long time. It's formed this kind of quite incredible base down here, a massive coil. You don't really see them form like this. You just see them a flat bottom base. This is a coil. It seems to be an institutional buyer or something down here. Now it's moved up. It didn't have a very strong day on Friday, though. You see what I mean? Not all stocks did well on Friday. It's actually had a negative day. So let's see if this can recover today, find a footing and get back above these levels, close this gap, start to build, or whether this is a failed breakout. I hope this isn't a failed breakout. It looks extremely promising. Next few days are going to be critical. Let's see how RIVN does. LYFT. Again, this is a favorite of mine. Again, really nice base. Waymo, the Waymo Alliance, which caused the pop in the name. But this is the kind of thing we want to see. Big base building, new narrative, autonomous vehicles, potential, could even be a takeout target. It's only 9 billion market cap for some of these big hyperscalers to use as a scaling platform. There's a gap here that's begging to be closed. In fact, let's just mark that out, right? And this is proving as a resistance at the moment. But gaps like this, if they get closed, then they can start to act as a support. So let's see how this does. Again, got some support on Friday, nothing major, but let's see if this can build out. Grab. So this is a Southeast Asian, food delivery companies consolidating market share, taking out smaller competitors. It's got a bit of a super app, ride hailing, food delivery, pivoting to from land grab to monetization, fintech cross sell as it achieves profitability and scale. It's in this range here. A lot of these stocks have kind of play within these ranges. Coupang is another one that stayed within kind of a range for a while. I hope this doesn't turn into a slow mover. But again, it's at the bottom of the range. Let's see if it holds, can move to the top of the range. Even to move to the top of the range is what? It's a 20% move. Let's see what this does. It's definitely looking promising. You come out of the base here. You form the consolidation, breakout consolidation level here as the move is digested, undercut here, which is perfect re-entry. And now we're in the second stage of the base. These often work out. They'll keep forming bases until they get escape velocity, and then they'll start to go parabolic, right? Another one I was flagged up last week as well. C had a bit of a pullback. But this is one I think did this type of move earlier. Not as clean, but you can kind of see there's a base here. You could argue that this is a lower base down here. So this is a consolidation base, but this kind of got critical mass and then started to move up. And just for context, this move after the breakout is 117% move. This has had a decent pullback. It's closed this gap down here. This could potentially be a recovery play. Something to keep an eye on, as results were very good the other day as well. All right, so going on to a solar stock. This is T1 Energy. This is a bit of a smaller cap. This is, I think it's only 640 million market cap. So you've got to be careful with these kinds of things that can really move. But this has got all, this has got all American solar infrastructure, battery supply chain. They've got a new plant coming up in the G2 Austin plant in Q1 2026. Does this create a $20 stock or an acquisition target? Tariff moat is permanent, as in all US building. AI demand surge from sort of battery and solar is you know, arguably just getting started. So this is an interesting play, but smaller cap. You know, these things, does it consolidate and then have a, you know, a really decent move? But, you know, one to keep on the radar. Then you've got from some small cap to mega cap, you have Amazon. So let's just see how this is forming up here. So I just paused there for a second. I had to restart my trading view. I think I had a slower version of it on. I've actually optimized my entire setup using ChatGPT. It's quite amazing what you can do. It's basically created scripts that my trading view is now at highest priority and now running on my GPU instead of my CPU, which is quite astounding. There's quite a lot that you can do with simple settings. Put your log files into ChatGPT and just basically optimize your entire machine and your applications. Anyway, Amazon, yeah, had this breakout here. I wouldn't really call it a structural breakout, but let's see if it gets support at sort of this breakout level. It's closing the gap. You know, does this then have a slower grind up? Again, slower mover, but it's a mega cap. And, you know, something to keep an eye on. Just on mega caps, you're going to see Google in focus today. It turns out that Buffett has taken a $4.3 billion stake in the name. It's up 7% pre-market. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how this holds up. And if this is, I mean, a lot of people, I reckon, will be forced buyers. A lot of funds, this will reweight the indexes. A stock this big moving up so much. So this is something to keep an eye on today. But just apart from that, going to the next one. This is Axtron, a semiconductor. They provide semiconductor machines for testing. Inside data centers, a device that convert and deliver power efficiency to AI hardware. And again, one of these AI story names flagged up to me about a deep fundamental guy. So yeah, again, here's the base. We need to see this sort of get traction around this sort of area. You know, there is another sort of level here as well. It kind of needs to hold. Let's see it here. You know, does this chop around and then have a big move potentially? It's on the radar. Let's see. Unity. Actually, I found out today literally that Gavin Baker's a tradies fund owns 6% of their fund is in Unity. Would love to get hold of their thesis to see what's happening here. But again, you know, this is holding up. This is sort of, you know, the monopoly, oligopoly type of thing in the game development industry. You know, does it get sort of usage through AI content generation, AR, VR, etc.? You know, this is a pretty nice base. It's a volatile stock, but, you know, it's holding up. Let's see if it can, you know, move, and then, you know, something like this can have a huge move, right? Let's see what actually happens. Okay, DLO. This is Latin American fintech infrastructure. I still need to go through the case of this. It's on my to-do list. But again, you see these Latin American, Asian stocks, they have this kind of like ranging. They might range for a while before they get traction, usually when their country macro gets a traction, etc. And these become beta trades to the macro. You know, something like this, once it comes out of here, let's see how well it can do. New one here, VIAV. This was actually flagged up by Stock Talk. You know, really decent stock picker on Twitter. Went through the case of this. This is basically leading edge Ethernet testing. Even large companies like Lumentum and Broadcom use them. They, you know, this is pivoting from telco to data centers. It's been a company that's been around for like years and years and years, and breaking out of a 22-year base, if you can believe that. You know, something like this is usually mean the company is restructuring internally, repositioning its expertise completely on a new data segment. You know, something like this could really surprise. I bet you there's nobody looking at this stock. Hardly nobody even knows what the stock even is, right? Pretty interesting find there. Let's see how it holds up. Let's see how it reacts and around this area, whether it closes this gap or not, and then can build for a larger move. And you got Sphere. This would be a regret of mine. I had a decent position, had this picked, but it just took so long and there was so much chop before it broke out. This is a 3-4 year range before it broke out. You know, arguably it's a decent range. You know, it's a 90% range. So there's in decent trading opportunities just within the range. But unfortunately, I've been shaken out of my position and I don't know how to get back in unless this has a real dump down lower. You know, I suppose it's always possible, but this, you can see the structural breakout. and now it's kind of gone. So pull back here, maybe comes back to the 50-day, maybe worth the entry. But again, this is kind of what we're looking for. This is a structural breakout post IPO. Then you've got Zillow, you know, again, tied unfortunately to the housing market in the US, which is not so good, but this is a unique company, one-stop shop for all real estate buying and selling. You know, I do like these kinds of plays, but it's not really doing much at the moment. But one to keep on the radar, providing it holds this level here. And you've got this one. This is DUOT Technologies. Again, this will be completely under the radar. I can't remember who flagged this up. Maybe it was Stock Talks that flagged this up. To me, basically, this is a rail testing company that is pivoting into edge building, edge data centers, AI, rail car AI to AI inspection, edge data centers, machine vision, infra expertise is growing this whole compute market. So you can imagine if rail car inspection has got a lot of machine vision heavy kind of applications, you're looking at how the rail cars are performing, etc. You know, potentially can get, you know, it's been adapted to the AI data center narrative. I need to do a little bit more work on exactly why, but again, it's had the breakout. Let's see if it holds up. You know, it's not hugely inspiring. It's not hugely strong, but one to keep an eye on here. We'll just go over Tesla quickly as well. You know, this is coming back to its breakout level. You can see some interesting price action on Friday that it came below, it filled the gap, moved back above. Let's see if this can actually hold up, build this move and then move up later on. Again, you got the robotics, theme here as well. Stock that I've kind of had on my radar for a while. As I was going through my chart scans this weekend, I decided to put this on here. I did some work on it as well. Now, it seems there is a big pivot going on internally. This company is extremely cash rich, 7.7 billion on its balance sheet, so it can do quite a lot of stuff, and it's absolutely embedded in the corporate workflow and inside corporates, even with Microsoft Teams and Google Meets. You know, it's doing very well. Basically, they're gonna transform to an AI work first platform, integrate agentic AI, and you know they're embedding AI and automation tools into people that use Zoom a lot. You know, this stock was a darling during COVID, but they've spent time building. And again, it's these kinds of bases that can have really explosive moves. And it seems that this company is retooling completely internally, you know, and this is probably going to catch a lot of people by surprise when it actually happens. So I want to keep on the radar. That is Zoom Technologies. Now look at XLE. I just put this in here just to note. This is an 18-year range that XLE, the energy ETF, is starting to break out of, right? And this is due to data center demand, etc. New oil well drilling, all types of energy applications, etc. You got nat gas stocks starting to catch a bid as well, pipelines, etc. So it's something, a massive sector is breaking out of such a range. Definitely worth keeping note. There'll be some stocks that really skyrocket if this sector really takes off. The other sector that's really sort of got relative strength and catching a bid is biotech. You saw that Stanley Druckenmiller, a lot of his portfolio, a decent percentage of his portfolio, you know, is actually positioned in the biotech space. I think his largest position is Natera, and you can kind of see that, you know, Stanley Druckenmiller, being a chartist, was probably buying in here somewhere, and now this has had a decent breakout. You know, this is a this breakout move is already sort of 20%. You know, for a large fund, that's a pretty big move. So you've got the biotech space getting traction. My play on this is ARCG, because I want the higher sort of beta companies that are going to use AI. You know, it hasn't worked yet, but again, it's starting to firm up a little bit here. This can move sideways. You know, this can potentially go later on. You know, Tempus is a key stock in this area. Had a drop, come back to sort of support area here. Let's see how this acts in the next few days. RX is the speculative name in the stock in this sector. You know, using AI, etc., really does need to prove itself. And then got ABCL, which is Antonio Linares's pick of this as well. Worth keeping an eye on when you've got large, you know, investors with a big following doing deep dives into things. You know, this stabilizes here. You know, this can get traction. What else have we got? What else is setting up? So Porsche, I spoke to a few investors about this at various conferences. It definitely is on people's radar. This is an S-tier brand. It's in crisis, not failure. There's a new CEO. The Piaget family has taken back control. They want to go for Ferrari-like margins, right? Can this be sort of a next Ferrari and really sort of get going? The CLFT, this is a new one on my radar. Met the company last week. Again, there's something interesting going on here. I didn't really understand what they were doing before, but basically huge amounts of data that are generated by a company's internal, IT systems, websites, customer engagement, etc. All the data is streamed on an open source platform called Kafka, which Confluent then takes that whole data feed and actually makes it into something usable for AI systems, management, dashboards, all kinds of stuff. So it's one of these companies that can really benefit from AI. Let's turn this alert off. Can really benefit from increasing AI usage. And again, look at this base that's forming. If we can get above this level, it builds to here. Then who knows what can happen here is people start to understand what this company does. Okay, what else have we got on the list? Fiverr. This was flagged to me by somebody as well. Again, this is very, very early, but they've cut staff. They're retooling towards AI. As people lose jobs, they potentially go into Fiverr as gig workers, bringing more skills to the platform. You've got AI delivery mechanisms as well on this. This is, again, it's been in a long base, and this has to prove itself a bit more. We need to kind of see holding this mid-range and then get above this level. But again, something like this has got sort of high operational leverage in it. If this really starts to catch on, or if they really start to get traction, then this can be a big winner. Another one with a similar theme, Coursera. People thought that AI would destroy the stock, but what's actually happening? They're using AI heavily in their operations, and they're selling a boatload of AI courses as well. It's had a breakout. I think this needs enterprise traction, which was a problem why it didn't get too much traction after this breakout. But if this can, this has been done a decent undercut now. The undercut and rally is a is a very valid pattern. You can see the undercut here below this area. It's rallied above it now. We're going to take this area back, closes this gap here. This can get traction and a footing, something to keep an eye on. All right, stocks that are working, it's really nice to look at these. These are where we've picked some out. They've really worked, and this Micron is just unstoppable. Big volume on Friday, just a big reversal. People are looking for any way to get into stock. It's not giving anybody an entry. I'd be a buyer of this sort of pullback. A stock like this, you can just juice it for returns while this entire trend lasts. This can come back to here. This becomes a buying opportunity. It's not even getting back to its 21 EMA. It's how much demand there is for this stock, but definitely one to keep an eye on. I think that is the leader for this cycle. Post NVIDIA, post Palantir, Micron is a new leader. AMD again, holding up really well. As you know, I've done a fractal on AMD down here. I think there's a potential that this is the next NVIDIA. The pattern is the same as the setup. Maybe we get this consolidation down here that NVIDIA had after its initial run up before it had the big move. It's going to be very telling if AMD can hold up, right? Again, another one which potentially becomes a buy on dip situation, a trade that can be juiced. What else have we got? Okay, so I'll take a couple out. Netgear breakout failed. So I don't really like holding these high beta stocks and breakout. I mean, these could recover, get back above this level, and then make its move. But at the moment, that's on watch. Tau, I had high hopes for Tau, but crypto's been an absolute dog recently. With the AI trade coming off as well, Tau's failed breakout. This is not pleasant. I've got a decent position in this. Ideally this gets its footing and then makes this big move at some point. But yeah, let's see. There's another one that I took off as well. I think I forgot to include HRI in this. It was, it still is a decent trade. I'll have to put this back in. It's kind of didn't manage to hold this level here. You know, I mean, it still could, this could just be a lower base rather than where I've marked it. It could just be a bit lower down. And that's where it gets support and then ranges and then moves up. But let's see, again, one that needs to prove himself. We actually want to be in faster stocks that are going to make bigger moves rather than smaller rather than stocks that are just move too slowly. Otherwise, your capital gets tied up. So you're looking for things that are going to, you know, are at breakout levels, can really move. This GLXY has been a bit disappointing, but I suppose all the crypto and AI data center stocks have been taken out. Just taking a look at some of these, right? You've got Nebius Group. This is touted as probably the best quality stock in this sort of segment. Didn't have a very good day on Friday. It moved up and then sort of, you know, gave quite a lot of it back and had average volume as well. Does it fill most of this gap before it, before it really gets a footing? Let's see, there's one to keep on the radar because if these recover, they can form a base and then they can really have other moves as well. Let's look at iron. Iron, again, a similar story. A lot of these look the same. You know, a lot of the story has been, in CoreWeave and, you know, what their CEO comments were. You know, this again has been relatively weaker. You know, again, I think these will all move as one basically segment. When they recover, they'll all recover together. So you got Wolf as well. You know, they all look very similar. So let's see what actually happens there. What else should we go through? Just bring up the Bitcoin chart. You know, it's at 95, undercut a level. You know, let's see if we can recover from here. Really, this is not very promising. But crypto can have stunning recovery, just one candle up, and basically everyone is optimistic again. So let's see what actually happens. Other notable movers. You know, Eli Lilly, and you've got this whole healthcare space starting to really move. That's a pretty nice setup. So definitely something going on there. Let's look at Antero Resources. This is a natural gas stock. Was one of my go-to stocks in the last bull market. Do have a position here. Again, waiting out this range. If we can break and we can break a lot higher. When these kind of stocks go and commodity stocks go, they really go. Take a look at silver. This had a really decent recovery move. Yesterday, the last week or so, you know, had a nasty sell-off, you know, back at the all-time highs. Then let's see whether that got some stability. It's holding above its 50, but does it get it and then move sideways and then go up? Or does it move lower, test these levels, do a, you know, 68% retrace, etc. Let's see how that plays out. Gold as well. Let's get a quick look at it. It'll look pretty similar to silver. Yeah. In fact, weaker than silver. You know, was that the last gasp for gold? Was that the yearly high? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Keep it shorter. I'll do another video when the next update comes out. But good trading, everybody. Again, this is educational purposes only, not financial advice. You know, as I said, I do hold positions in some of these stocks and part of my own process. But good trading.